feature presentation.
What's up, everybody? Happy New Year. Welcome to episode 142 of the Untitled Movie Podcast. I am one of your hosts, Matt Rohrbeck, alongside. He's allergic to tomatoes, but he is tomato meter approved. Eric Marchin.
Matt, it's award season, and with that comes voting time. And with that,
Voting time. One last call for screeners before they expire today. Did you vote already?
no, I've got
Ooh,
maybe
I voted a
one
week ago, bro.
one more movie to watch. I try to get like
As
at
much
this
in.
point, yeah,
Where I just give up and I go, you know what? This is I'm voting on what I'm voting on.
I get set in my ways and then I'm done.
I
Uh,
uh, I voted not like I voted fairly recently, but I got it done. I was happy with my choices. I won't spoil what I voted for. Um, if you, I mean, you know what we loved this year, so you probably have a good feeling of what we voted for. We'll talk about all of that on our Critics' Choice Awards post show next week. But this is going to be a little, award season preview. We've already kind of done that, but specifically Critics' Choice, which is this Sunday, January the 15th, on the CW network. You guys can watch the Critics' Choice Awards and see which awards Eric and I contributed to. Did our votes matter? Did they not matter? You'll have to tune in to find out. Tune in to the Critics' Choice Awards this Sunday, January 15th on the CW network. Check your local listings. Yeah, I'm excited, man. Like it is exciting every year. Like when you sit down and you finally go, I'm gonna vote now. Okay, I'm voting for. I really loved this movie. I can tell because I'm voting for it a lot in numerous categories. So I'm excited to see how it all pans out this weekend.
yeah, I think it's one of those things where it's always nice to be a part of a group and kind of put in your 2 cents and then see if there's other people or enough people that share that passion with you in certain categories, or if there are certain films that have that capability of making it into a nomination, and like you look at something again like RRR or After Sun, like there were enough people that saw the film and it connected with, that voted for it, and it made it into those two movies, made it into certain categories where it's like, again, something like RRR, you know starting its kind of run back in the spring of last year, and now becoming even maybe a little bit bigger than just like a cult classic in North America. um it's just strangely gratifying to know that there are people that are excited to go and see it in a theater, if it's available to them. And movies like that are the ones that kind of are always the biggest surprise, I would say. The films that you're not expecting to do as well, or what they do in terms of their achievements and their accomplishments, where something like The Fablemans is kind of like, okay, that makes perfect sense that it would be nominated for all of these awards. But then you have
More
a
like the
movie.
Fablemans because it's fading from my memory. I like the Fablemans. I just,
um
yeah.
but yeah, it's just like even something like Everything Everywhere All at Once. It's like a movie that maybe wasn't, like, again, on paper really an awards movie, but the change in terms of what we perceive to be an awards film is changing as well. Like there are movies that are more kind of conservative in their estimate of like a biopic, or a music biopic, which is always kind of like the classic catnip for awards voters. But
Especially best actor, best actress. It's like, wow, what a great impersonation. Give him an award.
yeah, they put in fake teeth and have prosthetics. Great. But then you get something like Everything Everywhere All at Once, and that's a movie that kind of feels like it's both meaningful in where it's coming from because it's personal to the filmmakers in being very specific, but there are universal connections that you can attribute to your own life and how you feel. And then on top of that, it's just an incredible spectacle of a movie. So all of those things translating and then connecting to a wider audience and kind of building over time and having that momentum, and lasting as long as it has. Again, a movie that was released very early in 2022, and we're still talking about it now. Every time Ki Hui Kwan wins an award, it's just really wonderful to see him, accepted and give really lovely speeches and like probably one of the best performances of the year. So yeah, like those are the things that I think are the most gratifying when it comes to watching these things, or just even being a part of them. Like those little moments of being like, oh, I maybe contributed to that in a small, very small little way, and getting like this person nominated, or
Or
this
win.
film
Yeah.
recognized a little bit more. And that's the ultimate goal, is that you want more people to see the film or filmmakers or the performances that you loved the most in the year before.
No, I totally agree. Yep. I'm happy with the nominees. I think we went over them when they first came out. And we'll talk about awards in general. I know that the DGA nominees have come out. What else has come out lately? Is the
SAG.
PGAs? No, SAGs, yeah.
SAG and
PGA's not
PGA.
yet,
Yeah.
right?
No, no,
Oh,
no.
PGAs
PGA's.
have?
Yep. Yep.
When did that happen?
That was yesterday.
Oh my God. We'll go over all of that. Eric's the master of all this stuff. So
The
he is the
master of
true
disaster.
where I'm just along for the ride. I love the Oscars. I love our voting in the Critics' Choice, and I love every year I feel like we have the same conversation of how I think, to your point, which you just made, is like, yeah, you just want to showcase some of these films, whether they're underappreciated or maybe underwatched, or maybe they're huge hits and stuff like that too, but you still want to kind of celebrate them. I think that's what award season is wonderful for, right? Because we got to sometimes get out of our own little bubble, whether it's film Twitter bubble or just cinephile bubble, and realize that not everyone saw a lot of these movies, right? Like RRR, yeah, it's huge with people that we know that have watched it, but I don't think it's huge around the world. It was a global hit, but like, I still don't think, like, when you go to our parents, like, I don't think they've got to RRR yet, right? Like,
No.
like, obviously Top Gun's big representation there for for dads and moms everywhere, but like, um but yeah, even I'm so glad, like, my parents gave Everything Everywhere All at Once a shot, and have been going on Disney Plus or Netflix when these movies drop. And even if they don't get out to the theater much, uh the other night they threw on, I felt so bad for them, they're like, we watched Amsterdam, and I was like, guys, no. Not we're talking about awards movies, but just they'll throw things on Disney Plus. But they also watched Glass Onion and loved it, and things like that. So I've been hearing both things from Elvis, be it, people either love it or hate it, which totally makes sense. I'll get messages from a friend being like, have you watched it? And I'm like, I did, but not I did not enjoy myself. And you have people being like, I absolutely adored it. And that movie, you know doesn't surprise me that it's made it as far along as it has. But I'm just kind of excited to see how it all nets out. So
Now, if Austin Butler wins the Oscar, will he ever stop talking like Elvis? That's the real question.
right, because he just keeps using the accent, right? Like, is
Yeah,
that
and it's so weird because like I was watching a
what is his
video
actual accent?
he's got a southern accent, but it's not like
Like, as
that
thick? Is it like,
deep and brooding
because
as
everyone's like, he's
he's
from Anaheim, right?
yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
like,
Like he has a bit of a
um,
southern twang. There's a really funny video on YouTube that shows you the before and after the making of Elvis, and before he's just kind of like a normal guy, very kind of like laid back and likable and affable in that way. And then post Elvis, it's like, guy, come on. Like let's
he's
I
committing to the bit, right? Like, it's just like you do that for these conversations, or for people to be like, oh, that's him. That's the Elvis guy. Um, I don't know, whatever,
mean
but
even Rami
power to
Malek
him.
didn't do that after playing Freddie Mercury,
He took the
like
horse teeth out and, like,
he kept them in.
yeah, just threw out the whole thing, never shaved the mustache. Um, but yeah, I don't. How do you want to go? Do you want to just go through Critics' Choice right away and kind of just go through the nominees? Do you want to go through PGA, DGA, SAGs? What do you want to do?
Yeah, I think we should maybe just do Critics' Choice and then kind of go from there, and just maybe just even just talk about award season in general, because it does feel, again, like it's just a very interesting mix, because you are getting also more populist films this year really becoming contenders, because again, expectation versus reality. But who would have thought that Top Gun Maverick would have been a best picture contender? Like nobody would have saw that a year ago, from, like been able to predict that, and let alone being the, one of the biggest movies of last year. I mean, obviously Avatar's kind of taken that crown now, but um just thinking about that as like an Oscar film, it's kind of funny to think that like that's the movie that people would embrace for
Yeah, like
Tom
Kaczynski made it
Cruise.
in the DGAs,
Yeah,
right? Like
and
that's
I mean
wild.
that's one thing that we could talk about right off the bat with the DGA, is that there are no women in the DGA
Yeah.
nominations for Best Director. There are obviously for First Time Feature Filmmaker, but there's no Sarah Polley in that category. There's no Charlotte Wells. It's just like,
Gina Prince Blythewood. Yeah.
yeah, it's just it's completely void. And again, like, it's obviously there's no rules in terms of having a certain amount of parity when it comes
Yeah,
to
like
male
what
versus female, but
we talk about this every year, dude, of what's the best way to like kind of tackle that. Like, do you go, oh, it's 10 nominees and it's 5 and 5 now, but then that gets tricky with like people who are gender neutral, or
yeah,
and things like that too. And that gets really tricky, like if you separate it like with best actor and best actress. I think that's taking a step back almost as well. Like, I don't even think the actor category should be necessarily separated, but I don't think you can combine them at this point, because we've gone so long with having them separated. And I think there's pros and cons to doing it both ways, right? Like, the pro of that parody that you talk about. But the con is acting and directing is directing, right?
yeah.
But how do you, it's hard. You can't tell your voters to vote a certain way, right? Like, you're putting in the people that get nominated, and like, is it a unconscious bias that a systemic kind of bias in a lot of these organizations? Yes, because I feel like if you look at the people that have throughout history have been members of these guilds and things like that, like you see organizations trying to make that parity more even in their membership, so it's reflected more in in its nominees and things like that. But we're still not there, that's for sure, unfortunately.
No, and again, like, it's just one of those situations where, like, I wonder how many movies individual voters see, and do they see enough in terms of the broad spectrum of watching movies from a diverse point of view, that's, you know, even just like an international aspect. Like, obviously the Academy Awards and, Critics' Choice and SAG and things like that, and DGA and PGA, they're American based institutions, but film itself is an international art form, and
Yeah.
even that, like, I mean, that discussion came up last year with something like Drive My Car being brought into directing and best picture, and there was a time where, people like Akira Kurosawa or Fellini movies would be considered on par with anything that was being released in North America. But there has been this kind of divide over time where it's always going to be American first, or English speaking first, and then, international movies second. And international movies, again, can also mean from, Europe. It doesn't necessarily have to mean from a country that doesn't speak English as their first language, but, the cinema isn't one language. It's multiple perspectives and points of view coming in and making art, and when you think of something like, this year, there are a number of films that could be considered for more than just international film, just to put it into that one category, the same way that, like, Guillermo del Toro has been talking about, animation as not just for children, and not just simply relegated as a cartoon. It's there's more work that goes into making an animated movie than simply just saying, "Hey, you know what? We'll give you an animated Oscar or nominate you in this
Yeah.
category."
Yeah, I
So,
would love to see GDT's Pinocchio make it into, Best Picture
or
for
production
or
design or
production. Yeah.
something like that. Like, I mean, sometimes animated movies obviously do get into picture or screenplay, but yeah, like just like something that's a little bit outside of the norm. Like, I mean, even like looking at something like Marcel the Shell with Shoes On, like, the editing of that movie and how that movie's
Yeah.
constructed, or even with documentaries, you know Hoop Dreams is one of the few times where the film wasn't nominated for best documentary that year, which it should have been, which is baffling, but it was nominated for editing, and a documentary still has never been nominated for best picture. And then again, obviously, All the Beauty and the Bloodshed is an amazing film, but it's more niche and maybe polarizing than some of the more commercial narrative films. So that will be passed over for a Top Gun Maverick or a Black Panther Wakanda Forever or Glass Onion, because obviously there are 10 nominees in Best Picture, and usually the bottom 3 or 4 are usually the ones that are kind of, maybe not the passion picks, that are the ones that are just kind of, on somebody's list of 10, they'll be in the slots between 7 and 10. So when it comes to preferential balloting, so those are the movies that are going to be those final few. But it's just a shame that something like All the Beauty and the Bloodshed, which is a really potent movie and kind of gets its message across perfectly, but does so much more than just being like a standard portrait of somebody's career, and actually has something to say about what's going on in the world now, that could be a wonderful movie to put in the best picture category. But again,
Yeah.
I think documentaries are even more relegated to their one category than even animated films.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. I feel like we have very similar conversations every year, right? And
It
then maybe
happens,
we're
and it's going to happen
slowly,
again.
yeah,
So
until it happens, right? Like it just until it becomes like a regular thing. And again, you don't want to force certain nominees in there and things like that. Like you have to have the blockbuster one, the animated one, the documentary one, the whatever. Like I guess the best films make it in based on your voting people who vote for your awards. So, yeah, I don't know. It's I don't know. I think we'll be having some of these conversations for a while until someone breaks that glass ceiling and an animated picture wins best picture or a documentary or anything like that. Like I hope we see that sometime soon. Let's fly through some of these and I can get your thoughts about award season as a whole. We'll save Critics' Choice for the end, since that's the one we vote on, and we'll just kind of end the show with kind of previewing the Critics' Choice Awards for this Sunday on the CW, January
Sunday.
15th. um, so let's start with the PGAs. So we have the Daryl F. Zanuck Award for Outstanding Producer of Theatrical Motion Pictures. You have Avatar: The Way of Water, The Banshees of Inisherin, Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, Elvis, Everything Everywhere All at Once, The Fablemans, Glass Onion, A Knives Out Mystery, Tar, Top Gun Maverick, and The Whale. The Whale getting in there is interesting, but I guess people probably respect Darren Aronofsky quite a bit. Yeah, like this kind of makes sense to me. I think like what's interesting going through all of these things is you're seeing like a different group of 10 films all the time, or between, is this 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
Yeah, it's
6,
10.
7, 8, 9. Yeah. Um, but yeah, you get the Russo brothers back in the awards race with Everything Everywhere. You
Great.
always forget that they're producers on that movie. You got Kevin Feige in there. You have James Cameron. So you got some big name people, and you got a big Netflix movie. You got Spielberg in there, and Baz Luhrmann. The Top Gun Maverick makes it in. So what do you think about the PGA nominees? Are you anything surprising or?
Yeah, I think The Whale is the one kind of film that's surprising, because it has been divisive with critics for the most part, but it does seem to be doing well with audiences and even people within the industry. You have the Brendan Fraser comeback narrative, you have the Fraser Sance or whatever they're calling it. So that's partly there, and it's also a film that has played the festival circuit, but is getting had a late year release in December. So now it's kind of you know getting a little bit more of a push, because of, that late release, so people are catching up with it still, right? So like even with SAG, you saw, Hong Chow get nominated for actress in a supporting role, and you know again, like everybody thought, okay, maybe Frasier would be the one nomination when it comes to the
To
Oscars
the
for
whale,
that,
yeah.
and maybe adapted screenplay because that category is so weak. But even best actor is a weak category this year, or so it seems, anyways, depending on how you look at it. So yeah, it's just interesting that, like, again, you have a lot more of a populist kind of grouping of films with Top Gun Maverick, with Glass
Yeah,
Onion, with Black
Avatar,
Panther, with, yeah, so like you have movies that,
Elvis, even to
audiences,
an extent.
yeah, yeah, and I mean even Everything Everywhere All at Once, I think more people have seen that film than, probably they would have maybe
Tar or
five.
Fablemans.
Yeah, yeah, where those films kind of, died on the vine, so to speak, and had shorter theatrical release windows, where Tom Cruise was keeping Top Gun Maverick in theaters for as long as possible, and I feel like James Cameron is doing the same thing with Avatar, and Elvis kind of kept going and going and going. So yeah, you have more of a populist 10 than you do any kind of obscure art house movie. I guess the most obscure art house film would be Tar on that list, in a way, because it's the one that's most kind of austere and polarizing in terms of, you're either on board with it or you're not. And the Whale is as well, but the Whale, I think, is for different reasons.
Yeah, I think it
Um,
still is weirdly more accessible than Tar.
Yeah.
Um,
And yeah, so like I think those are the most interesting things, where you do have more, like, maybe you'll have more people tuning into the Oscars overall because of these bigger films that people have seen, because then they'll be rooting for the movie that, they liked when it was released theatrically. And
which is
like
definitely
again,
what the
Top Gun Maverick.
Academy and ABC probably wants, right? I mean, I
Yeah.
know we scrapped that popular Oscar, thank God. What the hell
The
those
Flash enters the
yeah.
speed zone, or whatever, the
God, that
force.
that was also the worst. And then we also have the award for outstanding producer of animated theatrical motion pictures, where you have Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, Marcel the Shell with Shoes On, Minions: The Rise of Gru, Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, and Turning Red. Uh, I wouldn't even be surprised if this is the 5 for animated, but
Yeah, maybe with the exception of Minions, I could see something
yeah,
else coming in, except just because, again, like Minions almost feels like the one that is almost too populist in
I
that way,
agree.
where it's not an
Where
art
if something
in
smaller might
animated
bump it
movie.
out or something,
Yeah.
right? Like I could see that. Moving over to the DGAs for Outstanding Directorial Achievement in Theatrical Feature Film, you have Todd Field for Tar. You have Joseph Kaczynski for Top Gun Maverick. You have the Daniels for Everything Everywhere All at Once. You have Martin McDonough for The Banshees of Inisherin. And you have Steven Spielberg for The Fablemans. So as Eric mentioned, no women nominated. You know, you have 6 nominees, 5 or 6 people nominated, 5 different nominees. But yeah, you know what? I'm surprised Kaczynski made it in, to be honest. But that's just the power of Top Gun Maverick this year. Like I I am kind of surprised to see him. Everyone else, I guess I'm not so surprised. Spielberg and Todd Field making it in, McDonough making it in. Um, and then I'm glad the Daniels did. But how do you feel about this group?
Yeah, so there's a couple ways to look at it. The Kaczynski thing is interesting because he hasn't actually really been nominated anywhere else this award season. Like like he
I think
hasn't
that's
been
why I was surprised.
consistent.
Yeah.
Where the DGA, which is a very male dominated awards
Yes,
body, went for him, and that's partly because of the power of film and Tom Cruise, and I mean, it is a well directed movie. Like I think, like
I agree. Yeah.
it is something that you don't want to take for granted, but
But I
like,
don't think of it being like, oh, it's because of Joseph Kaczynski why Top
no.
Gun Maverick is great.
No, especially when Spiderhead was released in the same year, where
Yeah,
you're
that
kind of like, okay, well, obviously one of these things is not like the other, and like there's not a consistency when it comes to, like, I think a big part of what makes Top Gun Maverick sing, and why it's been nominated and winning a lot of the awards in that category, is for cinematography. I think that
yeah.
like that's the thing where like it could be mistaken for I mean,
direction.
yeah, and Kaczynski is
They
a
go
very
hand in
technical
hand.
guy.
Yeah, they go hand in hand. Don't get me wrong. Like Kaczynski's a capable guy and he does a great job with Top Gun Maverick, but I just don't necessarily go like if you took Joseph Kaczynski out of that movie and put someone else there, it's more Tom Cruise than Joseph Kaczynski,
Well,
right?
even
Like
Christopher McQuarrie coming in and
yeah,
doing
and doing
rewrites, you know?
yeah, so, like, I'm not trying to, like again, I've listened to some of Kaczynski talk with Ryan Johnson and other people during this award season, and, like, I like the guy, I just, and I even like, you know, Oblivion and, did he do Tron Legacy?
He did, yeah.
Yeah, I like Tron Legacy. Like it's fine. It's not a great movie, but I think it's fine. Like entertaining. The score actually does a lot of the heavy lifting there. But I don't know. Like I just feel like if you take him out and pair someone else with McQuarrie and Cruz, not anyone could do that job. Like you still have to be a competent director, but I don't necessarily go that movie's great because of Kaczynski's direction. So he's like the one that I was kind of like, oh, okay, I don't know if I would have voted that way. But
Yeah,
obviously other directors respect him. So
yeah, the editing and cinematography seem to be the two things in that movie that really do also keep the momentum of that film going and are so strong. And I feel like those are the two things that will be more consistent in terms of their awards wins and things like that. So with Kaczynski getting nominated here, I mean, I don't think he'll get nominated for an Oscar. I
I
think he'll
don't
be
think
the
so
one
either.
that'll kind of the Daniels. I'm also still kind of up in the air with as
I
well.
hope they make it in, but
I do too, but like the Daniels are interesting because they are a duo and they're not brothers or they're not siblings. So the DGA and the Academy and certain guilds and unions always have this thing where it's like if it's a duo, it's harder to get nominated, and that's why like for so long Joel Cohen was the sole, even though both Ethan and Joel Cohen directed equally all the movies that they've made up until Tragedy of Macbeth. um Joel was the sole
the
director
credited director, yeah,
and Ethan was like the credited producer because like there was this thing where you can't have a
be a duo,
duo.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so with the
They've
Daniels, like,
they've loosened that quite a bit, but it's still even the Daniels talked about how hard that is, even in the DGA,
yeah.
to stay as a directing duo. Meaning, if you say you're a directing duo, you can never direct without the other person, or else they
And Daniel
basically like,
Scheinhardt directed
yeah,
without Daniel
did,
Kwan.
and they got mad
So
at them.
yeah, so I could see, like, I mean, this is good that they got in for that, but I could also see them being the surprise snub in the Oscar nominations because of
I
that.
think they make it in. I think they
I
make it
do
in.
too. I do too. But if there is a reason for them not
Like a
making it,
shock surprise, yeah.
that would probably be the reason why. But them making it into the DGA, I think, is pretty good. In terms of just like cementing them into that final five. But yeah, and then with the other two that are kind of interesting, just looking at it from just like an interesting perspective, is that both Martin McDonagh and Todd Field are guys that are known also as writers. They've been nominated before as writers, and Martin McDonagh having a theater background, Field being an actor turned director, but his previous films being nominated for screenplays, but being passed over as a director. Um, is interesting because now you have both of them in the directing category, and so it's like almost like they're being, because I mean Martin McDonagh was nominated in the DGA before for Three Billboards, but he didn't get nominated for an Oscar for directing Three Billboards. He was snubbed that year. So it'll be interesting to see if both of those guys get in for the Oscars, because again I could see maybe one of them being passed over because they're considered writers and their nomination will be for original screenplay, and that's good enough, where
Yeah.
that would make room for somebody else. But again, like going back to like the Joseph Kaczynski thing, it's like, I mean, a guy that's gotten nothing this year and should have been nominated a couple places for directing is someone like Jordan Peele. Like, I mean, talk about like how he made a Spielberg-esque movie, and like that's a film that really is about the direction, as much
Yeah.
it is about the social commentary about exploitation. So I think those are the interesting aspects in that category, and obviously the omission of no women, like not having Sarah Polly in that group is and women talking not doing as well as
Yeah,
people were thinking is kind of a bummer. So
I agree. I think I would swap Sarah Polly for, I didn't love Tar or and again even Kaczynski, and I think Spielberg's like an obvious, like, of course he's nominated. I get it.
he's probably going to win. Like I think he's going to win the Oscar for directing again, because he's won two before for Schindler's List and Saving Private Ryan, and then he also won the producing for Schindler's List. Pardon me. So Schindler's List he won two, and then Saving Private Ryan he won the directing Oscar. So he has three in total. But he's also Steven Spielberg, so it's like, why not give him
Yeah,
more? So like, because he is the quote unquote greatest director ever. Um, but it's strange, because like I would give that argument more to someone like Martin Scorsese, because Martin Scorsese only has one Oscar, which he won for The Departed for directing, right? Where it kind of feels like Spielberg does have two directing Oscars already, so it's not like
yeah.
he's been
I
hard
just
done
don't know
by
if
that
people
way.
think about that stuff. Like, I just feel like they vote with their gut or their heart, and
Well, they're
but
voting in
Spielberg
the
being
moment,
Spielberg,
right?
and
You know,
Spielberg being Spielberg, like, I still think, like, even if you don't think it's the best directed movie of the year, I think it helps that you're Steven Spielberg.
yeah. And you're
So yeah,
telling a
we'll see.
personal story, right? Like
Yeah.
it's Spielberg's origin story, so like that also
So
really
of
does
him
sell.
becoming a director, so
Yeah.
give him a directing Oscar. Yeah. So we'll see. And then you also have outstanding directorial achievement of a first time theatrical feature film director. I always love that the DGA does this. I think when we talked about ideas of what the Oscars could do to add different categories, obviously stunt work, casting
Casting.
are the two that we bring up all the time. But I would also love like a best first feature Oscar. I think it would be a wonderful addition, whether it's first time director or just it's a first film kind of thing. You just nominate the film. I would be 100% down for that, because I feel like if you want the Oscars to become this, like, okay, here's the last year, here's the future, like the past, present, and future of film, I feel like you need to kind of adapt a little bit, and you can do that with awards, with the way that the production is of the show. And I think starting with like a best first feature would be a really great idea. So I'm glad the DGA goes out of their way to do like first time theatrical directors. Okay, let's go through the nominees here. Alice, is it Diop? Is that how
Yeah,
you say
for
her
Saint
last name?
Omar.
Alice, yeah, Alice Diop for Saint Omer, Audrey D1 for Happening, John Patton Ford for Emily the Criminal, Antonetta Alamat Kusonovich for Marina. Oh, that's awesome. I didn't know that Marina got in here. And Charlotte Wells for After Sun. Um, I love this group of nominees. This is awesome. Marina, totally criminally underwatched. Emily, the criminally underwatched. A small movie no one saw. I saw it at TIFF, not last TIFF, the TIFF before that, right?
Yeah.
Um, and watched it with my wife, who is from Croatia. It partially takes place there. A solid little movie, so nice to see Antonetta make it in there. I just watched Emily the Criminal, an excellent little thriller. So nice to see John Patton Ford there, and obviously Charlotte Wells with After Sun. After Sun is fantastic. I have not seen Happening or Saint Omer yet.
Neither have I, and I do want to catch up with them both, and I haven't seen Marina either, and so I have all those ready to go. Like I just had to get through all the nominated stuff for the Critics'
Yeah,
Choice before I could get to the stuff that I kind of could watch more leisurely, I guess, in terms of just catching up with. But that's what January's for, right? Like it's to catch up with the stuff before Sundance.
before
So
Plane.
yeah,
um, Cliff Curtis, star of Avatar: The Way of Water, is in Murina, so he's just in all the water movies this year.
and he was also, I mean,
Um,
Scorsese's an executive producer on Morena, so
yeah,
you know.
yeah, he is. And great to see some, great women nominated here as well.
Yeah,
So,
4 out of the 5.
which is that's how they're like, okay, well, It's just so stupid, but like it's great to see that. It's just, um, the parody
But it's
isn't even
almost
quite
weirdly
there.
like a consolation prize, though. It's like we
Yeah.
won't put any women or
It's
non-binary
almost like
people
women
in.
just started directing movies, so they're in the first time
Yeah,
feature. It's just like you roll your eyes at it, but
when Charlotte
um,
Wells,
eh,
I think, should be in both categories. So
I totally agree. Um, and now the SAG Awards quickly before we get into Critics' Choice.
SAG.
I gotta skip over television. Sorry, we do talk about TV, but not in an award sense. I guess some of these are television movies. No, I'm gonna skip those. Comedy series, comedy series. Am I accidentally on the television one, or as you can tell, I am? No, I got it. I got it. I got it. I got it. Um, Cave, starting with outstanding performance by a female actor in a supporting role. Angela Bassett for Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, Hong Chow for The Whale, Carrie Condon for The Banshees of Inisherin, Jamie Lee Curtis for Everything Everywhere All at Once, and Stephanie Hsu for Everything Everywhere All at Once. Do you want me to just go through them all and we'll talk about it as a whole or each
Yeah,
category? Yeah, okay. Outstanding performance by a male actor in a supporting role. Paul Dano for The Fablemans, Brendan Gleeson for The Banshees of Inisherin, Barry Keoghan for The Banshees of Inisherin, Ki Hui Kwan for Everything Everywhere All at Once, and Eddie Redmayne for The Good Nurse. Outstanding performance by a female actor in a leading role. You have Kate Blanchett for Tar, Viola Davis for The Woman King, Ana de Armas for Blonde, Danielle Deadweiler for Till, and Michelle Yeoh for Everything Everywhere All at Once. And then you have outstanding performance by a male actor in a leading role. You have Austin Butler as the titular Elvis. You have Colin Farrell for Banshees of Inisherin.
the titular
You have
banshee.
yeah, you have Brendan Fraser as the whale, or in the whale. And then you have Bill Nighy as the titular living man in Living. And then you have Adam Sandler in Hustle.
As the
And
titular hustle.
yeah, and then outstanding performance by a cast in a motion picture. You have Babylon, The Banshees of Inisherin, Everything Everywhere All at Once, The Fablemans, and Women Talking. And then you have outstanding. Are we going to go into the stunts? Yeah,
Yeah,
let's give
go
the
with
stunts
some.
some love. Come on, we've been
Yeah,
talking about that. Outstanding action performance by a stunt ensemble in a motion picture: Avatar: The Way of Water, The Batman, Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, Top Gun: Maverick, and The Women King. Eric, anything stand out to you in these nominees? I'll start with Adam Sandler making it in for Hustle is awesome. I think is having Stephanie Hsu and Jamie Lee Curtis both getting nominated, I think is awesome. Um, and I like that Babylon and Women Talking, they're almost like the individual performances, yeah, they're great, but when they all come together, now you're talking. Now it's like now it's an ensemble,
now
it's
you're
truly an
women
ensemble.
talking.
Yeah. So Babylon and Women Talking, which didn't really show up uh anywhere else, right? And even
No,
Fablemans, I guess Dano shows up, right? But
yeah. Well, that's the thing that I find most interesting is the Michelle Williams
hey,
omission
I
there.
maybe people were seeing what I was saying after I saw Fablemans, a little bit too much overacting.
Well, I don't even think it's that. I think it's that. I think part of it
You
is
split or what?
really it's a split vote of terms of where her category placement is. This happens all the time where you'll have a performance like I got into this on Twitter, where I mentioned like, oh, I could see Kate Blanchett, I could see Michelle Williams ending up in supporting, and I still could see her getting nominated in supporting for the Fablemans when it comes to the Oscars, because there has been precedent where either an actor has campaigned in a different category or the studio has put them in a different category, and then the Oscars ultimately say, no, you're going in this category. And the two great examples of this are Kate Winslet in The Reader, who that whole season back in 2008, she had two movies that she was in: Reservation Road with Leonardo DiCaprio, directed by Sam Mendes, and The Reader. And Reservation Road, she was put in the lead category, and then The Reader, she was put in supporting. And throughout the entire season, she was showing up in supporting for The Reader and in various categories for lead in Reservation Road. And then when it came to Oscar morning, she was snubbed for Reservation Road, but was nominated in lead for The Reader. And then you go back to the 70s in 72 when Al Pacino did the same thing that Michelle Williams did. He said that he wanted to campaign for lead for The Godfather because he is a co-lead. He is
Oh
next to
yeah.
Marlon Brando. I mean, he's in more of the movie than Marlon Brando is. Um, but the whole season he campaigned for lead, and then the nominations came out for the Oscars. He was nominated for supporting along with Robert Duvall and why am I blanking on his name now? It's because there were 3 nominees for supporting actor that year. I can't believe I'm blanking on this. This is so embarrassing. I'm having a
It's
bit of
not
a brain
embarrassing because
fart.
I don't know any. I
No,
don't
but
know
I
any.
normally know this stuff. But
I know
so
you're
Robert
usually
Duvall was
pretty good. How
nominated
dare
for
you?
supporting. I'm trying to think of the third guy who was in there. It was Al. Oh, James Caan. So James Caan, Al Pacino, and um, Robert Duvall are all nominated for supporting, and Pacino did not go to the Oscars that year and protested it because he didn't want to be nominated in that category. And then when The Godfather Part 2 came out, he was nominated for actor in a leading role. I'm not saying The Fabelmans Part 2 is going to come out and Michelle Williams will be
Sure.
nominated
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
lead then, but because she made the decision, and she has every right to, obviously, to go with what she feels she deserves to be, but because I think a lot of people are seeing the film and seeing that Paul Dano and Michelle Williams aren't the lead characters, and that it's from the point of view of Sammy Fabelman, that there's some confusion there, and maybe that led to her not being nominated for lead because she wants to go for lead. And she
Yeah.
probably, like, that's the thing, that the whole the other interesting part of that is that this whole season was that before she announced she was going for lead, she was the front runner even before people saw the movie, to win,
For supporting.
to win it. Like, she had like a home run basically. Like it
She
was like
might
the
still then make it in for supporting. That
yeah,
to
but
your
now
point,
that
right?
Angela Bassett has kind of created the narrative
Yeah.
of being overdue herself, I feel like even if Michelle Williams, because Michelle Williams could kind of split the vote completely, right, and not get in lead
What
actress
would
or
happen if you
supporting.
got enough votes for both lead and supporting?
I think there's been something happened with that where I was talking to someone about that, where
Like if you
that's
were in the
happened in the
top
past.
5, yeah, like
I think you make it in the one that you have more votes in, or the one that,
right.
like,
Like a higher
you
percentage of
yeah.
of votes or
I think
whatever.
that
Yeah.
I think that happened with Daniel Kaluuya in Judas and the Black Messiah. Like, he was actually in both, like, people were voting for him in both lead and
And he
supporting.
had enough to be in, but that'd be funny. He win for both supporting and lead.
Well, Barry
Yeah, that's
Fitzgerald was
interesting.
nominated for lead and supporting for Going My Way, the movie with the Bing Crosby movie, but that was back before they changed the rules.
Oh,
So,
for the
but
same role.
yeah, and he won for supporting, but he was nominated in lead and supporting. But this again
Interesting.
was like
See?
back before the
Before they changed it.
regulations
Yeah, yeah.
changed, and now, like it's interesting because, again, like, you don't see, like, you can't have one actor even in 2 different roles, I don't think, nominated in the same year. I don't think you can, but director you can, because I remember Soderbergh was nominated for both Aaron Brockovich and Traffic in
I'm sure you can be nominated for 2
2000
different films. It's just like the same nominee
in the
twice.
same
Category, yeah.
category. I don't
Why
think that's
couldn't
ever
you?
happened though. That
I
would
could have
be interesting,
sworn,
but
maybe
I don't
not
know
at
if
the
there's a
Oscars,
rule.
but somewhere else I feel
Oh
like
no,
I've
no,
seen that.
I think you can somewhere else, but, like,
But
I think the
you got to
Globes have
think in
done
the
that
Oscars.
before.
In the Oscars, I don't see why not, right? Like if you, it's probably never happened because the way people vote, they pick one performance that
Yeah.
someone was better than the other, and then they probably give someone else a shot. But like, I wouldn't be surprised if whoever get example, I don't know, like if
Well,
Michelle Williams,
if you had a
or
big
go ahead.
name that's in, like, two, Like like DiCaprio is like the perfect example of this. Like
Sure.
back in 2006, DiCaprio had both Blood Diamond and The Departed. He got nominated for Blood Diamond for
But
actor in a
he
leading
could have
role.
possibly get nominated for both, right? Like, I
Yeah,
guess
but they put him
supporting, you could have
supporting
gone with
in
Departed.
SAG,
Yeah.
so that
Yeah.
also maybe confused people as well. So
But I wouldn't it doesn't make sense to me how you could go, well, you can only be nominated once. If it's two different performances, you should be able to be nominated twice if both get voted in.
I don't disagree, but I don't know if there is a rule or not with that as well,
Interesting.
because it's like, again, like it's almost like, is that, because again with directing as well,
Yeah.
like it has happened at the Academy, but I'm not sure if it's happened where one actor's been nominated more than once for two different performances, or if there is a rule against that specifically, because I could see there being a rule against that, but I'm not sure. So
It is not possible for the actor to have multiple nominations in the same category. She or he can have one in supporting and one in leading the same year, but cannot have
yes,
two nominations for best actor or supporting actor in the same year. That's so interesting. I just don't I guess you would just only put in whoever whatever role got more votes, to your point, right?
yeah. And then again,
Cuz
like
the
the supporting and lead thing happens a lot.
yeah.
Like the last time
Yeah,
it
you had
happened
Scarlett
was
Johansson,
Johansson, right? And
yeah, in
Emma
2019.
Thompson, Holly Hunter, Jamie
Kate Blanchett,
Foxx.
yeah.
Yeah, so that's happened a lot, but like, yeah, there's never been two
Yeah,
in
you
the same.
can't in the same category. That's so interesting because I'd be like, why the fuck not? If I was great in two films, I should be able to take two spots. If I'm better than these jabronis that are also like if you do two great, that's interesting. Um, yeah. All right. Well, whatever. I was wrong.
Yeah, I mean
All right.
Colin
Let's move
Farrell can't
on.
get nominated for both After Yang and Banshees.
And
So,
Batman, give him 3.
oh, I mean he would
Like,
be
oh,
supporting
he's
in that,
supporting,
like,
right? Nah,
yeah.
give him lead. Give him
Lead for
lead.
Penguin.
Yeah. Um, all right, let's move over and finish off with the Critics' Choice Awards, which are this Sunday, January 15th, on the CW. Make sure you watch them. Eric and I would really, really appreciate that. It's at 7 p.m. 6 Central on the CW. So go check that out on Sunday. Here are the nominees, and Eric and I will. I think we've already kind of gone over them, but we can kind of just discuss. So for Best Picture, you have Avatar: The Way of Water, Babylon, The Banshees of Inisherin, Elvis, Everything Everywhere All at Once, The Fablemans, Glass Onion, A Knives Out Mystery, RRR, TARRR, Top Gun, Maverick, Women Talking. I'll just go through everything, Eric, and we can just talk about it as
All
a
at
whole.
once.
Yeah. Best director, you have way a lot of people. James Cameron for Avatar: The Way of Water. You have Damien Chazelle for Babylon, Todd Field for Tar, the Daniels for Everything Everywhere All at Once, Baz Luhrmann for Elvis, Martin McDonough for The Banshees of Inisherin, Sarah Polley for Women Talking, Gina Price Bythewood for The Woman King, S.S. Rajamouli for RRR, Steven Spielberg for The Fablemans. For Best Actor, you have Austin Butler as the titular Elvis. You have Tom Cruise as the titular Top Gun Maverick. You have Colin Farrell for The Banshees of Inisherin. You have Brendan Fraser for The Whale. You have Paul Mescal for After Sun. You have Bill Nighy for Living. For Best Actress, you have Kate Blanchett as Lydia Tarr in Tar. Viola Davis as in The Women King. Daniel Deadweiler in Till, Margot Robbie in Babylon, Michelle Williams for The Fablemans, and Michelle Yeoh for Everything Everywhere All at Once. Supporting actor, you have Paul Dano for The Fablemans, Brendan Gleeson for Banshees of Inisherin, Brian Tyree Henry for Causeway, Judd Hirsch for The Fablemans, Barry Keoghan for The Banshees of Inisherin, and Ki Hui Kwan for Everything Everywhere All at Once. For Best Supporting Actress, you have Angela Bassett for Black Panther Wakanda Forever, Jessie Buckley for Women Talking, Carrie Condon for The Banshees of Inisherin, Jamie Lee Curtis for Everything Everywhere All at Once, Stephanie Hsu for Everything Everywhere All at Once, and Janelle Monáe for Glass Onion and Knives Out Mystery. Best Young Actor Actress, you have Frankie Coro for After Sun. You have Jalen Hall for Till. You have Gabrielle LaBelle for The Fablemans. You have Bella Ramsey for Catherine Called Birdie. You have Banks Rapetta for Armageddon Time, and Sadie Sink for The Whale. Best Acting Ensemble, you have Banshees of Inisherin, Everything Everywhere All at Once, The Fablemans, Glass Onion, The Women King, and Women Talking. For Best Original Screenplay, you have Todd Field for Tar. You have Tony Kushner and Steven Spielberg for The Fablemans. You have the Daniels for Everything Everywhere All at Once. You have Martin McDonagh for Banshees of Inisherin, and you have Charlotte Wells for After Sun. For adapted screenplay, you have Samuel D. Hunter for The Whale. You have Kazuo Ishiguro for Living. You have Ryan Johnson for Glass Onion. You have Rebecca Lenkowitz for She Said. You have Sarah Polley for Women Talking. For cinematography, you have Russell Carpenter for Avatar: The Way of Water. You have Roger Deakins for Empire of Light. You have Florian Hofmeister for Tar. You have Yanis Kaminski for The Fablemans. You have Claudio Miranda for Top Gun Maverick, and you have Linus Sangren for Babylon. For editing, you have Tom Cross for Babylon. You have Eddie Hamilton for Top Gun Maverick. You have Stephen Rivkin, David Brenner, John Rafua, and James Cameron for Avatar: The Way of Water. You have Paul Rogers for Everything Everywhere All at Once, Matt Villa and Jonathan Redmond for Elvis, and Monica Willie for Tar. Best, I'm just getting loopy. I'm not laughing at people. I'm just like, when you read a name that you're just not expecting. Willie is one of them. Great name. It's just like at the end of this,
especially
I'm
for a
getting
last
loopy.
name, right?
Best costume design, Ruth E. Carter for Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. Jenny Egan for Glass Onion. Shirley Kurata for Everything Everywhere All at Once. Catherine Martin for Elvis. Gersha Phillips for The Women King. And Mary Zophres for Babylon. Production design, Hannah Beechler and Lisa K. Sessions for Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. Rick Carter and Karen O'Hara for The Fablemans. I should just say no offense to these people. I'm just, but I'm going to go through it. I've committed. Dylan Cole, Ben Proctor, and Vanessa Cole for Avatar: The Way of Water. Jason Kizvarde and Kelsey Ephraim for Everything Everywhere All at Once. Catherine Martin, Karen Murphy, and Bev Dunn for Elvis, and Florencia Martin and Anthony Carlino for Babylon. I'm not butchering, like usually when we do this, when we read like titles for movies at a film festival, I'm horrible at it, but I'm doing okay. All right, moving
Alex
on
Reno
to
will be the judge of that.
Alex, let me know. Give me a score out of 5 on Letterboxd for this reading. Best score, Alexandra Desplat for Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio. Michael Giacchino for The Batman. Hildur Guntuntur for Tar. Hildur Guntuntur for Women Talking. Justin Hurwitz for Babylon. And Johnny Williams shares a birthday with me February 8th for The Fablemans. We got Best Song, Carolina from Where the Crawdads Sing. Ciao Papa. We have Ciao Papa from Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio. Hold My Hand from Top Gun Maverick. Lift Me Up from Black Panther. Natu from RRR. And New Body Rumba from White Noise. Man, Natu up with some heavy hitters. From with Lady Gaga, Taylor Swift, Rihanna, LCD Sound System. So that's kind of fun. Best hair and makeup, Babylon, The Batman, Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, Elvis, Everything Everywhere All at Once, The Whale. I forgot how many categories there were. Best visual effects, Avatar: The Way of Water, The Batman, Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, Everything Everywhere All at Once, RRR, Top Gun Maverick. Best animated feature, GDT's Pinocchio, Marcel the Shell with Shoes On, Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, Turning Red, and Wendell and Wild. See, Wendell and Wild is in here over Minions. That's what we were talking about earlier. Best comedy, The Banshees of Inisherin, Bros, Everything Everywhere All at Once, Glass Onion, Triangle of Sadness, and The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. And finally, best foreign language film, All Quiet on the Western Front, Argentina, 1985, Bardo, False Chronicle of a Handful of Truths, Close Decision to Leave, and RRR. There's also 2 special awards, which is the hashtag See Her Award, which is being given to Janelle Monáe, and the Lifetime Achievement Award that is being given to Jeff Bridges. Woo! I need a breath. Eric, how do you feel about everything leading into Sunday for someone who hasn't voted yet, where I have? So
You know what? I mean, again, like it's interesting because there's a lot of good stuff there, and obviously, like the best director category having what 10 nominees is a
there's a
lot, but
lot.
also, but it's also not because there are a lot of names that aren't there that could be on that list as well.
Oh, I'm
Uh,
glad. I like the idea of showcasing more. Like, even though
yeah,
people might laugh that there's, 6 nominees in each category and things like that. Like, I don't know if it lets you get someone in there that isn't really being showcased in other awards ceremonies, even as a nominee. Like, I'm cool with that. I don't know.
yeah, no, I'm not against it either. I mean, I do prefer symmetry when it comes to like five per category, but at the same time, it's like this isn't the Oscars, like this is a critics group, so why not highlight some more movies that aren't maybe necessarily going to be an Oscar contender. But again, you have a film like Nope that is nowhere on that uh in any of these categories, and that's a real shame because I feel like in some of them like for just visual effects even or cinematography, like that's like it felt like a no-brainer, and it's so weird that that movie
Just got
has been
shut out.
mostly shut out. I mean, Kiki Palmer has shown up and again, talk about the category thing where she's been nominated for supporting by certain critics groups, and it's like that's a lead performance, and even Universal put her in supporting, but I mean that's a lead role. Like that's, a co-lead.
Hmm.
So yeah, movies like that, I think like it's just always interesting where it's like even when you have more than what is expected in each category, there's still going to be films or performances or directors or writers that are snubbed. I mean, even someone like Park Chan Wook for Decision to Leave, or Tang Wei for that movie, like you know that film being nominated in one category where a lot of people thought like, oh, maybe it'd be a film that would kind of venture out of just international features. So yeah, it's always just interesting like what's kind of like put in those categories, and how sometimes not just the Critics Choice Awards but in general, where everybody seems to kind of go with what's expected. Like there's no kind of branching outside of the norm and saying like, not because you want to go against the tide, but like pick the thing that you actually want to, not necessarily the thing that you think is going to be nominated for an Oscar. And like that's the whole point of showcasing or reflecting what was the year. and
Yeah.
and and every year there's a film or two that kind of feels like it goes by the wayside, or maybe even a film that you don't like that maybe has something in it that is actually really good, and like you could be like, oh, I really think that this deserves to be nominated even if it's not going to be nominated in any other awards groups. It's like nice to kind of give that film a heads up. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
always interesting that way.
Yeah, and I like seeing things like RRR and SS Rajamouli to make it in, right? Because like I know we have 10 nominees, which the Oscars and other people do sometimes as well. But like having that many director nominees, like it lets someone like Rajamouli maybe sneak in there, right? Or maybe if it was only 5, you're seeing that same 5 pop up that we've seen in the DGAs or other places as well. Someone like we mentioned, like letting Gina Prince Bythewood and Sarah Polley make it in, not saying that they wouldn't have made it in with the 5, but again, it lets you showcase more directors, more people, and like After Sun showing up as often as it did in the Critics' Choice Awards, where you haven't really, critics groups are the ones that have been championing that movie. It just got the Toronto Film Critics Association Best Film of the Year. And which Eric and I don't vote in that or anything, but we are from Toronto and know a lot of people in the TFCA. But seeing like Paul Mescal show up and After Sun, Charlotte Wells show up in a couple spots there too, or you get some of the acting nominees that maybe wouldn't have made it in, like Janelle Monáe or Brian Tyree Henry and things like that, and that you haven't really seen pop up in other areas. So that's why I'm always okay with like a lot of nominees and things like that, even though some people can kind of poke fun at that. With my voting, like, not to spoil anything, because who the hell knows if people voted with me. Like, when it came down to it, it was a lot of everything everywhere all at once for me. Like, it was just, it really, what I said on that review back in March is like, if I saw a better movie this year, we'd have a really, really good year. And there were a couple movies that contended with it, like RRR, and I loved Babylon even a lot, and um Top Gun Maverick a ton. So like, as I was going through, it was so great to even have movies sort of compete with that, that one movie that I loved so much. But as I found myself voting, I was like, oh man, yeah, I really love Everything Everywhere All at Once. Because when I'm pitting it against these other movies, I'm like, it's that one that in that perfect spot where I'm like, I hope enough people agree with me. And it seems like, it's showing up everywhere and all at once. And like, my heart goes, would I love RRR to take this as a surprise? Yes. I don't think that's gonna happen, right? Like, RRR making it in Best Picture is a win, right? Like,
Yeah.
I think, like,
I think it could win song though. I think
oh,
song
I think
actually has a
absolutely.
shot.
I hope it wins. I want to see them perform at the Oscars so bad. And I want it to beat all those heavy hitters, because I think that's awesome. Like, and I think they have a strong shot at that, because I think that is the spot where that movie will get its, flowers or whatever. Like, it, it won't really show up probably anywhere else other than, probably just best song at the Oscars, right? Like,
I mean, it
most
could have a
likely.
shot in Best Picture
I
because if
hope
you
so,
have
dude.
enough
But like,
people who are like, I know, like, I mean, this is only one example, but I know like Adam McKay was very adamant about him. Like, he was saying like, I'm going to be voting for this as my number one film. So if you have,
and I think it has those people that really love it, especially in the
yeah,
Academy and other places too. They keep doing huge screenings. They just did one at, what festival was it? Beyond Fest or something
yeah,
like that.
Beyond.
And they're really kind of pushing it. I would love for it to show up
And
at
then
the
there's some people that
Oscars, but
haven't even seen it yet. And then there's also the thing where like a lot of people are, and this comes from a place of, I don't think it's necessarily mean spirited or what have you, but there's still a lot of people that are watching it and mistaking that it's Bollywood, it's Tollywood. You know,
yeah,
like that's the other thing where it's like people aren't educated on it and kind of maybe feel overwhelmed by like, do they know enough about the film and the filmmaking and the,
yeah,
some of the controversy that's come out with it, with the sort of propaganda, the historical
sure,
propaganda and things like that. So there's all of those things as well to contend with when it comes to a movie like that, where something like Top Gun Maverick is more like, it's a really great movie. I mean, I love the film, but it's a safer choice weirdly in terms of like what it's selling you and how it's selling you on that, and you're kind of aware of like, yeah, it's still also propaganda, like, and what have you. But um yeah, there's just something about like, not only is it an international film, but it's also a movie that is an industry onto itself that people aren't as familiar with in North America. So it becoming a breakout success the way that it is almost, having mentioned it before, is almost a reward onto itself.
yeah.
And doing as well as it has, like, it's really kind of gratifying that people from all walks of life are, especially if they get the chance to see it in a theater, which I think
Oh,
is
it's the best.
is the best way to see it. But a lot of people are watching it through Netflix, right? And they're watching not the Telugu version, they're
Hmm.
watching
The Hindi version, yeah.
the Hindi version. So like, even
It's
then,
also dubbed
people
in
are,
English now too on
yeah.
Netflix. So
I saw a clip from that, and I mean,
all the songs are still in
yeah,
Hindi, but all the dialogue is in English. And part of me wanted to see if they were going to translate the songs into English, which they don't. That would have been the most entertaining part, to see how they would have adapted that
yeah,
into English, but they don't. So yeah, I'm cool with all these nominees. I'm excited. I hope for some surprises. I hope we do pick some surprises. I hope, you know, it could just go the way of some of these other awards shows and critics associations and stuff like that, and maybe the same films will pop up. But I like a little chaos as well, right? Someone brought that up. Like, hopefully a different film wins the PGA, the DGA, the SAGs, and the Critics' Choice or something. So it's just no one has any clue of like who the front runner is come Oscar time and stuff like that. So it could be kind of fun if just different people keep winning. Like, there are some people that like Ke Huy Quan might just sweep every award show kind of thing. Like, I
Which
hope
he has
so.
been. And it's
Yeah,
also
and
it's a great story, right? Because narratively, like, I mean, the performance is excellent. Waymond is a wonderful character, and he gives an amazing performance. But there is that kind of narrative of the comeback as well, where, like, you have this former child actor who, 30 years later, has this second chance as an actor, and realizing how Hollywood is trying to make up for the fact of the lack of diversity in film roles, and kind of pushing this, kid to the side, and
yeah,
basically forgetting him. And, like, it's also just really interesting to see it, like, at a year when Spielberg's being nominated as
yeah.
well, right? Because of the Temple of Doom thing. So,
Well, even that
um,
connection with Brendan Fraser
with
from
Encino
Encino
Man, yeah.
Man, I thought was really sweet as well. So yeah, like, he's someone like Angela Bassett keeps showing up, like you said. Um, I'm always Team Michelle Yeoh, but who knows what could happen with the Best Actress thing. Best Actor looks like Austin Butler is almost like the front runner now, and is
And
like
he's gonna
overtake.
talk like that forever.
Yeah, like where I would love a surprise of like Tom Cruise randomly winning or something like that,
Yeah.
or Paul
Or Jared
Mescal, but
Leto
like,
for
yeah,
Morbius.
sure, yeah. So I'm
I
excited,
would
man.
pick Jared Leto for Morbius over Austin Butler. I'm sorry. I don't I'm really starting to get annoyed by him
I
and
feel
the
like
movie.
every musical biopic recently, you're just like, I can't deal with these anymore, and I can't deal
Rocket
with the
Man though.
actors.
Rocket Man, I
Rocket
think
Man's
Taron
great, and the one
Egerton.
that wasn't celebrated. What the
No,
hell?
I know. And Taron Egerton only got a SAG nomination. He didn't get an Oscar nomination for Rocket Man. Great performance, amazing
And
performance.
a fun ass movie, like a
Yeah.
fun movie that doesn't take itself too seriously. I remember when that movie started though, and I was like, oof, woof.
Yeah,
I
those
don't know.
first 5-10 minutes are rough, but then once Taron Egerton comes in, you're like,
Yeah.
whew,
Oh, this is a
thank you.
blast. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways, that does it for this episode. It was a kind of awards preview slash the 28th Critics' Choice Awards preview. We'd love it if you guys checked out the Critics' Choice this weekend. It's on the CW network. I keep mentioning that, 7 p.m. Sunday, January 15th. Please watch. Eric and I love participating in it every year. It's one of our favorite things. It's, awards can be silly, but I think there is good that comes from a lot of these things, and showcasing these movies. There's so many different ones that you can watch. But give the Critics' Choice a chance. I think it's I even though we're members, so we're kind of biased, but I do think that it's fun to participate. It's a good group of people, and I'm looking forward to watching on Sunday and seeing what wins. And we'll kind of break everything down next week of revealing what we voted for and what won. I think that was fun. We did that last year, where see if we contribute to the winner, or if did we try for something else and our pick didn't get chosen. So we'll break down the Critics' Choice Awards next episode. But please go check out some of our other shows. Eric and I just launched a brand new podcast called The Cast of Us, which is recapping and reviewing every episode of HBO's new series, The Last of Us, which also premieres Sunday, January 15th, but at 9 p.m. On HBO. And then right after that at 10 p.m. Eastern, new episodes of The Cast of Us will go up, where Eric and I break down the newest episode that just aired on HBO. So go subscribe to that, or you'll find the video versions on YouTube as well. Just search Matt Rohrbeck or Eric Marchin on podcast services. You'll see all of our podcasts pop up. The last two episodes of the Untitled Movie Podcast before this go over our 23 most anticipated films of 2023, as well as our favorite films from 2022. If you want to kind of get a sneak peek at probably what we voted for, go check that out. As well as new reviews for The Last of Us. Like I mentioned, we have a full review of season 1 of The Last of Us, spoiler free, both on Untitled Movie Podcast and the Cast of Us podcast. And then we also have a review up for Plane, which you guys can check out. Spoilers, it might show up next Critics' Choice Awards. You don't know. Maybe somewhere. So go check that out as well. One-stop shop for everything is Untitled_movies over on Letterboxd. As always, my name is Matt Rohrbeck. You can find more of my work around the internet, but mostly at UntitledMoviePodcast.com and on all those social medias at Matt Rohrbeck.
And I'm Eric March, and you can find more of my video reviews on rogerstv.com/cinemascene and on the social medias at EM6211.
Until next time.
And the winner for Best Picture is Morbius.